Hello, and welcome to another fantastic episode of the D Hope podcast, where we highlight stories of people in recovery. And if you know that you can be in recovery from a number of things. So today we have Carrie Stamps. Who has agreed to join us to tell her story, and so we're excited to have you, Carrie. Thank you for coming
Thank you
and
for
agreeing
having me.
to. You're welcome, and for agreeing to just to be you and share your story so that it can help impact the life of someone else. So we like to start by asking you to just tell us a little bit about your upbringing, your family of origin.
Well, up until the age of 5, I kind of lived with my mother. Not the best of circumstances, safety wise, drug wise. There was just a lot going on. At 5, my dad and stepmom got custody of me, and the situation really wasn't much better. He was an alcoholic, abusive. um just a lot of people in and out of my lives, going from place to place for a little while. um a lot of fear, rejection, abandonment, growing up.
Yeah. So at 5, when you were removed from your mom and put in the home with your dad and your stepmom, and that still wasn't the best environment. Did you stay in that environment, or were you moved again, like
I
quickly?
I was eventually I was moved again at the age of 10, to my father's parents, but they made it very clear that they did not want to raise me, that they did not want me there. And so eventually I did go back to live with my dad and stepmom up until about 15. And then I moved back in with my mom.
Okay. So you were there with your dad and your grandparents for about 10 years before
Yes.
going back to your mom. Okay, so at the age of 15, returning to your mom, was she in a better position, or was that a decision you made, or who made that decision for you to go back?
That was a decision that I made. The original agreement was that I was just going to go for a year and stay with my mom and then come back to my dad. Well, life had different plans, and so I ended up staying with my mom. She was in a little bit of a better situation, but overall, it still wasn't a healthy environment for me. No matter where I went, it just wasn't healthy for me.
Yeah. As the adults were struggling.
Correct. And by
And
16, I was out on my own. So,
okay, so tell us about what led to you being on your own at 16.
well, it was actually my mother's boyfriend at the time. He was abusive, and he propositioned me, and told me that I never had to work or anything like that. And I just got tired of it. I got tired of all the men in my life trying to abuse me and take advantage of me. So finally, at 16, I got a job and took myself out of all of it.
Okay. So did you like at that time did you, because I know I've heard of like teenagers having their own place to live. It seems wild, you know, that that can happen, but I've heard of of it happening.
Yeah.
So did you have your own, have your own place at that time, or were you staying with friends?
Well, me and he was my boyfriend at the time, but he did end up being my first husband. We got a little camper trailer uh, beside the water, and it was just a little bitty thing, but big enough for just the two of us. So We were close to school. I'd ride my bike to school and ride my bike to work. And so we just did that for a little while.
Okay. Cool.
Did you stay in contact with your parents through that transition
I
of
did.
leaving?
I did. My mom just lived a couple miles away. She wasn't very far. I wasn't necessarily running for my mom. It was her boyfriend at the time that, I was running from.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how old were you when you got married the first time?
I was 17. I ended up pregnant, of course. And so at 17, my mom signed for me to get married. We got married and had our first daughter when I was 18.
Okay.
How
So
was that
this-
relationship? Sorry. How was
Oh,
that
no, go ahead.
relationship with your first husband? Was
I
it
was
healthy or
naive.
y'all were just young and
Yeah, no, I was naive
yeah.
and young, and I was looking for love in all the wrong places. We just didn't know how to correctly love each other. And eventually, drugs took over his life. And so I had to make the decision to leave for my daughter's sake. So I think by the time I was 20, I had done left him.
And you just had the one daughter at the time.
Yes. Yeah.
And when you left, where did you go?
I think I went back to my dad's at that point. And by this point, my dad had gotten sober. God really stepped into his life and changed him. And so it was a semi-healthy environment other than my stepmom. So anytime I've ever needed a place to stay, my dad's always had his door open for me.
So tell us about your relationship with your stepmom. Was there tension? Did she drink or anything?
No, she was never into drugs, um, or alcohol or anything like that. She was more so maybe the narcissistic, you know, type. She would publicly embarrass me over things like openly in front of me, talk about me being raped to people that I had no idea who they were, right there in front of me. Just constantly lying and gossiping and trying to get me into trouble, and just openly did not like me, and still doesn't to this day.
Did she have kids?
Oh yeah, she has
Just make sure.
I thought, yeah, I was wondering too. Was it a jealousy thing of like
Yeah,
you
like
came in
what?
and
Yeah.
had attention from your father and like she just kind of like wanted that
Yes.
attention from him?
Yes, she even accused, we got stuck with a flat tire one time. And back then there wasn't mobile phones or anything. And she literally accused him of being out in the middle of the woods sleeping with me.
With
Like
you?
it was, yes. And I was
No.
maybe 13 at the time. So yeah. Yeah, that's the type of woman she was and still is to this day, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Are they still married?
They are. Yeah.
So I just want to ask this: is there mental illness on her part that you know of?
Yes.
Not known, or at least not diagnosed, I should
Okay.
say. But yeah, there's definitely some issues with her.
So to this day, like she still is who she was back then, sounds like. So do
Yes.
you have much interaction with her?
No, I avoid all interaction I can with her. I try to have a relationship with my dad. It's hard with her around though, because she won't let him say one word. Now, when I came into the foundry 3 years ago, my dad and I, that's when we really started working on our relationship and being able to talk. And he apologized for everything that he had done. And so we kind of reconnected. And he would come here and visit me at the foundry without her. Um, and so we were able to build, a better relationship. But now that, I'm no longer a participant and bound here at the foundry, if I go to try to see him or anything, she dominates. It's always got to be about her.
So yeah, like how so did they have kids together or
No,
just kids? So her
yeah.
children are um your step siblings. Um so your relationship with your mom. So to talk to us a little bit about when of course she signed for you to get married at 17, and you were still in communication with her, I'm sure. And talk to us about like what type of support she was for you when you left your husband. Or
Was at that point, when I left my first husband, she was working out of state. Um, Now my mom's always been my rock. For a while, she wasn't in my life in my younger years. I didn't know where she was, and I don't know why. Things were hidden, for me about her, no contact and so forth. But later in life, she is my rock. I absolutely love that woman. She has saved me from so many situations that I have put myself in. And she's always there, never asked a single question, why did you do this or what happened? She's my stronghold. She's the one that keeps me lifted up when I
yeah, she's
really need somebody physically there.
amazing. So her presence
Mhm.
has been just from this point in your life has been very amazing and helpful.
Yes.
I'm
Good
sure she
deal.
understands too from her past. And so she's
Yeah.
probably able to be more present and understanding and like have that empathy towards you
Yeah.
and what you've gone through because of what she's gone through. But
Yes.
I love that though. There's
Yeah.
mama's loves are special.
Yes.
Yeah. And she actually came through the foundry with me. She's had a couple, mishaps
Yeah.
but every time she has picked herself up and that's been encouraging to me. And I see her doing it and I know that I can do it. I have my mother's strength.
Mm-hmm.
Good deal. So tell us about what after the marriage breaks up, um and you move back with your dad, what happens after that?
Well, I kind of went wild at that point. That was,
And you were
it,
how old?
I was around 20,
20.
21, 22 time frame. And I was just very curious about the world, about different religions. And I started dabbling in Wiccan a little bit, just dating different people, seeing different people. I did end up in a relationship with a guy who was Wiccan, who was open about his coven and everything. And that was kind of one of the things that drawed me to him, because I was interested in that and just wanted to learn more. I thought, I'm a believer. I've always been a believer for as long as I can remember, but I didn't see the harm in learning about, other things as long as I wasn't practicing it. But
Mhm.
it sucked me in, and I began, dabbling in sorcery, things that I had no business, messing with. Um, Ended up, this guy, he bought me a house, bought me a car, just with him for all the wrong reasons. I didn't love him. I knew I didn't love him, but he provided everything I needed. And at that point in my life, I thought that, I can learn to love him, or I can learn to do this. But that never happened. And I did end up pregnant. And I was told that I didn't need to have another baby, that I didn't have my life together. Um, and I went against everything I believed in, and I had an abortion. And that crushed me. Um, I think more than anything in life, that one decision was the one thing that had the most deepful, shameful, hurtful impact on my life. But not only that, that one abortion, I ended up having two more immediately after. So within 1 year, I had three abortions. And
Mhm.
after that, I didn't feel like I deserved to live. I deserved every, painful thing in this world. So that was a kind of a dark time in my life for me.
And who was telling you that you didn't need to have another child? Like, was that coming from the father of the child? Was the gentleman that you
Um,
were in the relationship with, was he?
I actually never told him about the abortions until after, the relationship ended. Um, it was actually my mom who came to me. And at that point in life, I just I really wanted my mom. I didn't want to feel rejected by my mom. Um, and I thought that I had to earn her love and do what I needed to do. So that did play a big part um, in doing what I did.
That
You
that
wanted
kind of
that acceptance.
yeah.
Yeah,
And too, like when you're in a position of, where I'm looking at it from both your side and your,
Mhm.
and your mom's, especially if she didn't feel like you were in a stable, like place. Because sometimes these decisions are made purely from looking at the circumstance,
right,
and so you're looking at the circumstance. And um if if you don't have a solid background in, like you were saying, like I was a believer, but it doesn't sound like that the foundation was as firm,
correct.
um at that time. So without having the firm foundation and a true real relationship with Christ, you'll make it. I mean, I've done it. Look,
Mhm.
purely from this looking at the circumstance, going, I can't do this because I wasn't connected to the source that could have helped me,
Mhm.
make a different decision. So I can completely relate to your logic and probably your mom's too,
Yeah. And
in
my
that.
mom knew that I didn't love this man. None of my family liked him. They didn't want me with him. They didn't want me to be tied to him, which is, why I ended up having the other two.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it being back to back. And then after that third one, I was like, I really can't do this. I upped and left. And I did, after I moved out, less than a week later, I did sit down with him and talk to him and tell him what I had done. And had that conversation with him. He, we talked everything out. And he understood, and we were both in a good place, as far as the relationship was concerned when ending it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see my mom's side too.
Yeah, and too with the him practicing a different
Yeah.
religion too. I can, see that too in the them not her not wanting you to be
Yes.
tied to that, because you don't know when the spiritual world is for real, like for
Yeah.
people who question,
Absolutely.
yeah, who question if spiritual things are really exist. They do, and the people that we're
Yeah.
tied to completely
Oh,
makes a
yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
I was just reading in Proverbs the other day, and it was uh, talking about how to just go, like go from even a person that's just talking foolish, like to go away from them. And I'm like, if he wants us to go away from somebody that's just
Yeah.
talking foolish, he definitely does not want us to be in full-blown
Tied. Yeah.
relationships tied to
Not
this
unequally
type of
yoked.
person. Yes,
Yeah, and those
absolutely.
cords are
Yeah,
really difficult to break too. How did
yeah.
that I'm just curious, you dabbling into that other religion or spirituality, how did that personally affect you? Because I've done the same thing and it really had a big effect on me.
I was
So I'm
tormented.
just curious to know how it affected you. I didn't know it at the time until later.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know it at the time either, but
Mhm.
eventually, it literally tormented me. Like,
Yeah.
I literally heard voices. I was literally being tormented.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't feel that God was with me at
Mhm.
all at that time in my life. I felt like I was damned to hell for all eternity. I
Mhm.
was being told, that I would never be forgiven, that I was going to be damned to hell. And it literally sent me to the hospital, like in and
Yeah.
out of the psych hospital for 20 years,
Wow.
So yeah. Work
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, I
treatment.
think you go into it. Some people go into it naively, because
Yeah.
that's how I kind of got started, just being curious. And the
Mhm.
people I was around was kind of dabbling into it, so I was like, why not? And of course, my foundation was not a good foundation at the time either. So I was like, what, I need to see what's out there. And it wasn't until after yeah, I can look back now and see that those strongholds and those effects that it really played a big part in my behaviors too. I think is why I was acting so crazy,
Yeah,
because it
Absolutely.
affects you.
hmm yes, you get hooked up with it. And I like how both of you, said, well, it was no, I was just checking it out.
Yeah,
I'm
checking
just
it
I'm
out.
just
I
checking
just
it,
want to read some
just checking it
cards
out.
and see what it tells me.
Curiosity kills the cat.
The cat, yes. So it's some things, I think, from hearing both experiences, is some
Mhm.
things that we don't need to check out. We
Yes.
don't
Yeah.
need to know it.
Better off not knowing.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Like I like to say, that's none of my business.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna just stay over here with mine.
Yeah.
'Cause that is none of my business. Um, so tell us about after, so you left on good terms with him, so there's no backlash from him, thank God.
Right.
And then what happens after that? Tell us about the
Immediately,
chaos that ensued.
Yeah, well, actually, immediately after that, I met my second husband. And I had actually known him in my first marriage. So my best friend was married to him, and we were all friends, and they ended up separating and divorcing. And then, like a year later, me and my first husband separated and divorced. And my best friend kept trying to hook us up, and I was like, no, no. Well,
Strange.
eventually we did, and we ended up getting married like on a whim. Ended up immediately pregnant, and I had my second daughter. um that marriage, though, kind of ended the same way. He chose drugs over us, and there were some abusive moments in the relationship. But immediately after I had my second daughter, um, which I I don't know. I guess I suffered postpartum depression really bad. And that was really the kickoff of all the torment and everything that I had um started to go through. But the date of my last abortion and the date that my second daughter was born, um had I not had the abortion, I would have never had my second daughter. It was that close together.
Um,
um yeah. So, but after that relationship ended, I kind of I was very depressed. I was, telling myself I've done lost two marriages over drugs. I want to know what the big deal is. You
so you
know,
were not
um,
using substances during that time?
now I did start smoking marijuana at about the age of 13. But it was like a off and on thing. I quit when I got pregnant, and I wasn't going to use because I didn't want my children to be affected by it. So
Mhm.
after my first daughter was born, I quit smoking. I did like smoke a few times in between having my, other daughters, but it wasn't like a every day. It was maybe once every few months type thing. Then after my second daughter was born, like no more again. And so the majority of having my kids, I did not smoke. Prior to having my kids, I did.
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So do you
Now,
think that your experience with your parents, both having some issues, do you think that early on that may have kept you from dabbling even further, even though you had the marijuana use, but going further into
it
something else?
absolutely did. And I had always told myself that I would never um use, especially with my kids. I didn't want them to go through the same things that I had went through. I didn't want to end up losing them, and them, having to be shuffled around from house to house, or being abused, or, put in any compromised situations because of using. And I had always told myself that one day I was going to help children with parents of addicts.
Mhm.
That was something that I had always told myself that I was going to do, that I was going to help those people on drugs. I was going to help the families and keep the kids safe, and
Aw.
things like that. So I kind of had that calling early on, and that is really absolutely what kept me from, because it wasn't for a lack of being introduced.
Yeah.
I had an aunt who introduced me to crack cocaine when I was like 18, 19 years old. And both of my husbands were in harder drugs, and I chose to let them, for my
Mhm.
kids' sake. Um, but after that second marriage, I wanted to know what the big deal was. I've always been a curious person, and buddy, did I find out what the big deal was. And everything that I promised myself I would never do to my kids ended up happening to my kids.
Yeah.
So what did you use when
I
you
used
start?
cocaine to begin with, and due to the sinus issues and stuff like that, I was, somebody was like, well, you can just smoke it. And so I ended up on crack cocaine.
Mm.
I used for about 3 years. I lost both of my daughters. They ended up going to stay with my mom's mother, so my maternal grandmother. Um, Lost everything in that 3 years. Um, and that really, from that point on, for the next, I'd say 20, 15 years, it was like a constant cycle. I would use drugs, I would get off, I would get my kids back. Then I would have a breakdown, end up in the mental hospital, back on drugs, and abusive relationship, and that was just the next 15 years of my life. Um, Now that was I was on cocaine for about 3 years. My mom did come to my rescue at that point, and moved me to Tennessee, got me cleaned up, got my kids back. But of course, that was short lived.
So how long did you stay sober? But before that, I'm sorry. What led to like them taking your kids? I mean, obviously you're on crack cocaine, but I'm always curious of like, were you just you couldn't hold a job? Like, were you intoxicated with them? Like, what led to like your grandparent like taking your kid? Like your mom, your dad intervened, or
So I ended up in the hospital.
okay,
I had a mental break, and I tried to commit suicide. And the hospital, like my grandmother had my kids,
okay,
and when I went to get out, they had to make sure that I had somewhere to go. But my grandmother told them, well, if she's on drugs, she can't come here. And the hospital informed her that I was, in fact, on, I don't know if they told her what I was on, but so at that point, she was like, well, you're not allowed here. Kids are staying here. And that was that. Um,
okay.
yeah.
So like was a temporary custody order put in place, or were you
Uh, I
offered?
I believe it was, but honestly, I never like spoke to anybody at DHR, or, I don't know how that played out. Because honestly, I was just so out there that,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, but you just knew they were with your grandma and safe.
Yes. Yes,
When you got out of the hospital, did you go back to the crack cocaine,
I
or did
did.
you? Yeah, you did.
I did. I went straight back.
Yeah.
Because at that point I had lost my
Yeah.
kids. When they told me in the hospital, they literally had to put me in the padded room,
Oh,
because I absolutely lost it. Like, my
yeah.
kids are my everything in
Mhm.
life. So that was absolutely a low point for me.
Mhm.
And at that point, I didn't think that I had any reason left to keep going on.
Yeah.
Completely can
I
understand,
can understand that.
understand that, can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because if you a lot of times when there's an exterior source for why you are living,
Mhm.
You take that and you literally do take somebody's will to live, or the want
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
to live. And that's why I'm a fan of finding the inner why you want
Mhm.
it, the inner
Yeah.
part of why you need to or want to live,
Mhm.
so that you can, because we, life can come at us fast and we never know what may happen.
Happen.
um yeah, and if we're already, but like just up until this point, your childhood, your teenage years, in the beginning of adulthood, it's very traumatic.
You've been through a
um
lot. I mean, just
yeah,
from that early on, I mean, that would, I think, uh,
Yeah.
that would bring anybody to a breaking point.
point, yeah. And for you to have gone through these things and to be in your early 20s, and
Mhm.
that became the breaking point with all that went through. I mean, that's a some people may not have even made it to that, you
Yeah,
know
I agree.
um and the fact that you're sitting here with us today with
Mhm.
an amazing testimony. So let's move into how you got to the foundry.
Well, so after just cycle of years, I found myself into another abusive relationship, and I was at this point just pretty much smoking marijuana, drank alcohol. I did take, some Adderall or Roxy's here and there. I wasn't like totally dependent on them, but like I would use them, recreationally. And so my mom, she she OD'd, and it kind of opened up my eyes a little bit, and I started talking to her about the foundry, and how I wanted to maybe go just to kind of get out of the world and try to get closer to God. That was my true motivation for wanting to come to the foundry, was to just kind of take myself out of the world. um and so my mom said, one day, she was like, well, I think I want to go to the foundry. I was like, okay, let's go. I got the money right here. Let's
Yes, let's go.
go. So, so she got into the foundry, and of course, I started procrastinating a little bit more, and she began praying. Um, she had everybody here at the foundry praying me in to the foundry. And so about 3 months later, I was having nightmares about this guy killing me. And like many times in life, I had called out to God and asked, told him, I was like, well, God, if you don't want me in this relationship, make a way out for me. And at this point, I knew that I wasn't supposed to be in this relationship. God had done told me many and many and many a times, but I'm a person who wants confirmation after confirmation. And so I was having nightmares about being killed, and all of a sudden he comes and pulls out a gun, tells me he's going to shoot me dead in the face, that I better get back in here in bed. And so I did, but at that point I had made up my mind, okay, God, I hear you loud and clear. And the very next morning, a customer had come up to me and gave me a note that said, without faith, it is impossible to please God. And so I just busted out crying. I was like, okay, God, I got you. I'm going to the foundry. And so within a week's time, he had made that way. Everything worked out perfectly, that I was able to load up all of my stuff. Um, and made it here to the foundry, even down to picking up the U-Haul truck. I was actually running late because this guy had, made me late. They were already supposed to close. And I get there, and the name of this shop is Saved by Grace in Hueytown. And he was just like tinkering. He said, I don't know why I'm still here. I'm just tinkering around. And I was like, I know exactly why you're here. I was just saved by grace.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was
Absolutely.
absolutely the Lord that made that way every step of the way until I got here.
Mm-hmm.
So breaking away from the, like, going back just a little bit, breaking away from, so we have this 15 to 20 year cycle that you're in of just relationships of people who are using, where all of the men that you had relationships with were in some way, form, or fashion dependent on a substance. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And so
Yeah.
so you're in and out of these relationships with these gentlemen that are too dependent on a substance. So somewhere along the way, you stop using the crack cocaine,
Uh-huh.
and you're drinking and smoking marijuana and
Yeah.
doing pills here and there. And so are your kids still with your grandmother at this point?
So no, they were only there during my crack phase.
Okay.
My mom took me to Tennessee, got me clean and everything. And the way the devil works, he's gonna make it too easy, to not quit. So the very first person I met when I got to Tennessee became my best friend was cracked at it herself.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the way the enemy
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
But despite that, I struggled for a little bit there. But I had a point where I was my mom had control over my money, and so that I couldn't, have the money to go buy or whatever. Well, they were planning a trip to the beach, and I got a hold of my card, and I went and spent all the money that was, in my account. I didn't mean to, but crack just takes that hold over you. And I ended up spending all the money, and then so my children suffered from it. Now they still went on the beach trip and everything, but at that point, um, that was another low point for me, like a reality check. Like I just did this to my kids. Like up until this point, I had been like, well, it's not affecting my kids, I can maintain my job. I've always been one, like I've worked Waffle House for over 20 years.
So
You
you were
know,
able to, I'm sorry, you were able
yeah,
to still like maintain going to work
yeah,
while all that's impressive.
yes. And my kids, they always had everything they needed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know how, but like they've
Yeah,
always been like a main priority in my life.
of course.
Um, Minus the couple of years that I was on crack cocaine, it made it a little bit harder. But I
Mm-hmm.
did eventually, with my mom's help, get off of it. Never touched it again. I will never touch it again because it's straight evil. Like it will
Mm-hmm.
take me quicker than anything, and I know this. And that's another reason why I never tried meth or nothing like that, because I know I like it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not gonna try to fool myself anymore,
Yeah.
thinking, oh, I can just try it and be okay. No,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know I can't be. So I tried to stick with something that I could easily put down, like smoking, or I've never been a big drinker, so like I would occasionally drink. Things that I knew I could control. Um, is kind of what I more went for. But now there were times in my life during the cycle where I was absolutely sober, nothing for several years at a time.
Okay.
So I could maintain that sobriety to a certain point, but then something drastic would happen and I would need like to de-stress or something to cope with. I was going straight to marijuana or straight to alcohol to help me cope with. And then I'd be using it for maybe a year and then I'd be like, nah, I don't want to do this. Let me get clean back up. And, you know, so I did get my kids back, eventually, you know, but I had missed out on about 3 years of their life, because of the cocaine addiction.
So after, so we get rid of that addiction, but we kind of switch seats on the Titanic a little bit, and we
Oh yeah.
we're
Oh
we're
yeah.
still we're using something because like
Yeah.
literally that it's the substance. Like I know people call it, well, this was what I used to cope, but notice
Yeah.
when it's coping skills that it doesn't
Yeah.
take skill to to
Right.
have to reach for, you know,
Yeah.
that substance. So not having a lack of coping skills is what
Yeah.
kept
That's a
you
better
in
way to
the,
say it.
yeah,
Yeah.
kept you in that cycle of using or feeling like you needed something to deal with stress and all of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so coming into so your mom was already at the Foundry because she even if you didn't come, she decided to go.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
she was like, okay, we were supposed to come together, but she's kind of decided
Yeah.
she's not coming. um so she goes ahead and she comes in the end. She has everybody to pray for you to come in. And
Yes.
so we get away from the guy who's actively trying to harm you.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit more about how, like, because he at one point he has a gun to you
Hmm.
saying get back here. So how did you eventually get away from him?
So I came here. Of course, you know, you can't have phones or nothing here. So it was easy to go, no contact. And it was like a narcissistic, codependent type relationship. So I even went through like withdrawals from the relationship. Um, but being here, you know, I had my mom, I had all my sisters, I had a few, you know, weak moments and everything that I wanted to break down and just leave. But they all got me through it. And so when I completed the program, I changed everything. I changed all my passwords before I came in, because he had even contacted me on Pandora once. He got on there and changed all the title, sections to messages to me.
I don't
So
know how you do that.
Yeah, because I was like, that's
he
Pandora.
had my password. So I made sure I changed my email, I changed phone numbers, I changed my Facebook, and immediately blocked him, from being able to, you know, even be able to look up my new Facebook. So it's just been no contact. And I made sure that every route of communication was shut off.
So so apparently when you got away from him, he wasn't present when you left.
Oh
Is that
no,
right?
no.
So
Lord
you
worked all that out, that
out
that he
that
wasn't
he
around and I was able to make a clean getaway. He probably just went to the house like, oh, she done, you know, I don't know where she's at.
that yeah,
Type
she's just gone.
situation.
Yeah.
I
And
ghosted
so
him for real.
bro.
You did.
Yes.
Yeah.
So so you get away from him and you make the necessary changes to not have any contact, or like he doesn't know where you are. You were in a space where he
Right.
didn't know where you were. And then how did because coming in when you got into the door at the family, like you said, you had some withdrawals from that relationship because for those of people who may not know, we can be addicted to people too.
Yeah.
Or just we can be addicted to certain types of relationships. It's just a gamut of things you can find yourself addicted to.
Yeah.
So one book says it this way, like it's no relationships and destructive relationships that can lead to addiction. And I find that to be extremely true. Because
That's
it's
good.
either the lack, either we're fearing rejection and abandonment, which can lead to that addiction, the lack of intimacy, people not really knowing us, who we truly are, and we can't explain who we truly are when we don't know who we are. And especially when you've had traumatic experiences in your especially, I believe, especially in childhood, that lead you to it, because it just warps you. You don't know who you are. You don't know who you're supposed to be. You're treated, if you're miserably mistreated, that can lead you to having no self-esteem. Forget about low. You have none, which will cause you to get hooked up with people, because of the opinion that you have for yourself. If I don't deserve better, I'm not going to look for better.
Yeah. That's good.
If I don't feel like I deserve that. So coming into, as you got into the Foundry and you began to reconnect with God, talk about the change that happened there.
Yeah.
Well, so when I first came in, I was very oppressed. I was literally hearing voices. By that point, I felt tormented. And I didn't understand. I thought maybe I was going crazy at first. And at one point, I thought it was God talking to me, but then the things that it was telling me, I knew couldn't have been from God. And so I started battling it with the word, and slowly I kind of built up my faith. But I went through a deliverance, and that really freed me. I had never spoken about my abortions until I got to the Foundry, and went through the Alabama Abortion Recovery small group. And so things just started falling off of me, all the guilt and the shame. And every time I've told my testimony, I've gotten just a little bit lighter. And I can actually feel the Lord now. I have had no more voices since my deliverance. And it's amazing. It is just so amazing to be connected with God. And yeah, a lot different from the rest of my life.
Yeah. Amen.
That's
So
awesome.
yes, I love that that how you said you use the word
Yes.
and to combat the voices. So that can help somebody to know that there is hope, and it's not always through medication.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Is because, like, there are, I say it this way sometimes. I feel like sometimes when people have been diagnosed with multiple mental illnesses, in the ways, I feel like that can be more of a spiritual thing. I don't often, like, think that it's always just but because mental illness mimics so many things.
Yeah,
I just believe that it
it
does.
does. It
And
does.
there's things that are spiritual, and that people are trying to fix with medication, that if you aligned yourself
Mm-hmm.
and believed God, choose to
Mm-hmm.
believe his word
Yeah.
above anything else,
Yes.
above what your thoughts are, what your feelings are, what you see, then that's when that you can, because he said by his stripes we are healed.
Yeah.
Like, so, and he another scripture talks about how he heals us from all sickness and disease. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't take his word lightly. Like
Yeah.
it's and it truly starts with us being able to choose,
Yeah.
Yes.
choose to believe. And that's what, faith is, my ability to believe. Um, and it sounds like that's where you got to a place where
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you know what? Not don't believe these voices in my head. This can't be him. I'm reading him. Look,
Yeah.
I'm reading
Yeah.
him, and I'm discovering that's not him talking. Um,
Okay.
yeah, like a lot of times I hear people ask that question, but how do I know the voice of God? Or how do I,
Mm-hmm.
like how I know it's him speaking? And I think I heard Jensen Franklin say it this way one time: when you can't hear God, reading.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, like it's a whole book
Mm-hmm.
with 66 books
Yeah.
on
And he
of him
speaks to you
talking.
through the word.
Yeah, of him speaking to us. And
Mm-hmm.
like, so tell us about your process of how you use the word to combat
Mm.
situations.
Well, so I will state that in the past, I have had multiple diagnoses. Um, from being in and out of the hospital, spent 6 months at Bryce State Mental Hospital at one point.
Wow.
So on tons of medication throughout the years. Thank God I'm on none today. And I have
Amen. That's
not had
awesome.
any craziness like I've had in
Mm.
the
Yeah.
past. So spiritual warfare is real. Um, but like one of my favorite verses is because I used to have anxiety a lot. Was the Lord does not give me a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. So
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
anytime I start feeling anxious, I will absolutely repeat that verse over and over until, and pray. Like, okay, Lord, I know this is not from you because your word tells me it's not from you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I just, pick whatever verse I need for however I'm feeling and however many times I need to say it, pray it, whatever. And that's how I fight with the word, because I know his
Amen.
truth. And
Yeah.
he is not a man that he should lie, as one of my favorite people used to tell me all the time. So
I love it. He is not. Yes,
What did how long did that transition? I always say there's always like there's just a process you go through. Um, but how long were you like at the foundry where you were able to like really grasp like and work on your relationships and kind of like let the past no longer interfere with like your present and what you were trying to do, because you had that bad relationship that obviously you're having a detox from.
yeah,
You also had, your mom, but you had, your kids and your father, and all those are like, it's hard at first to navigate and get through all those emotions when you're getting sober and you're trying to build that foundation. It takes time. I mean, from my experience. So what did that look like for you? When did those relationships and that shift happen? After your deliverance, or was it kind of like,
yeah, yeah. It was definitely after my deliverance because up until that point, it was just like I was just being tormented.
Yeah.
And
You
um,
couldn't
at
see.
that point, I didn't know what to believe anymore because I was praying, to God, and yet I was
Mhm.
still, felt tormented and hearing these voices.
Yeah.
And so I think it was about 6 weeks into the program, I had an absolute breakdown.
Yeah.
I was ready to go, like I just could not take it anymore. Um, at that point, that was when I ended up having my deliverance about 6 to 8 weeks in. And from that point, just
With John?
I did. I went through with Buccarelli, and
Yeah.
then but I also went to Transformation Ministries
I did that
later
too.
on in the program.
Hmm.
And then I had another group of ladies. I think it's from King Ranch or King something. They actually came in and prayed with me and silenced the voices or whatever.
Are
And
they from Kingsway?
Kingsway, that's
Yeah.
it. So they were actually the first ones to come out and pray with me. Um, and it kind of gave me that leg up. Okay, so now I'm not hearing these voices. I'm not being tormented. So I started filling myself with the truth. And, and then I don't know, just gradually, I just felt better and better each day, a little bit lighter. And I'm still working, I'm still
Yeah.
working on it because there's still times where, I struggle and I have to get on my knees and, you
Of
know,
course.
get my strength from the Lord. Um,
Yeah.
so it's
That's a
been,
forever thing.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. So is it safe to say that your coping mechanism or coping skills at this point are prayer,
yes,
reading, and not just reading and hearing the word of God, but actively using the word of God
yes,
as a
Mhm.
weapon to wage war against the enemy that we all have, um,
Yeah.
that
absolutely.
that wants to trip us up with the lies.
Yeah.
So when you decide what's going to be true for you, which your
Mhm.
decision is the word of God is true for me, and
Yes,
you use that to combat the enemy and his different actions. And so I haven't heard you say one time that you've turned alcohol or pills or
Yeah.
nothing other than
no.
what has been working for you. So how many how long has it been since you used the substance?
It's been a little over 3 years.
All right.
Awesome.
Yes. And
Congratulations.
of course, I'm currently, working with other ladies, going through the same things. And that really helps too. Um,
Hmm.
having the accountability, surrounding
Yeah.
myself with, other women who are just like me and going through, school to become a certified recovery support specialist.
Yeah.
Something I've always known I wanted to do, but never thought I could because I let the
Yeah.
Yeah.
enemy lie to me for so long. But the Lord, He's good and He works all things out for the good. And so
Hmm.
everything that I've been through is just a testimony for other women,
Yeah.
just like me.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And that helps me too to stay sober and to keep my head on straight. Because I want to be usable. I want God to be able to use me.
Well,
Yes.
you definitely are. Your testimony is just powerful in itself. I've learned all this. I didn't even know all of this stuff. So, it's really it's it's touched my heart today because I love to see somebody where they've been and what they've gone through, and then the light come back into their eyes, so to speak, and then they do that transformation that God only Himself can really do,
Yes.
you know? And for you to sit here and be sober and help other women, knowing that all that trauma that you went through, I mean, it's going to help someone else,
Yeah.
you know, where they can say, I can do that too, you
Yeah.
know? So
Absolutely.
it's awesome. I love that. So is
Yes,
it
me too.
difficult though at times because you still live there and you're with the
I
ladies
do.
all the time. Um
Not left,
so
and I
I
hope
know
I
that
don't
it's
see it anytime
interesting.
soon.
Do you ever feel like you're kind of, I always want to know because you're always in it, you know, like how Norma Jean was there when I was there and she was just always in it. So I know it can be a little bit frustrating at times. Is there ever a point where you kind of feel like heavy or burnt out by just the, because it's, you know, you're dealing with so much and in heaviness from other from
Well,
other people.
thank
So like what do you do to
thankfully
like help that?
thankfully, I don't have to do it on my own like Norma Jean did.
Yeah.
I have somebody else who is here with me,
Hmm.
and if it gets too heavy, I go to her, I go to Twana, go to Donna, I go to whoever I need to go to, you
Yeah.
to talk this out,
Yeah.
see what we can come up with together. And because there are two of us now, we're able to get away, for
That's
the
good.
weekends
Just
or
self-care.
whatever. Um, yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm not exactly just stuck here all the time, and I really
Right.
think that that's what helps, because I am able to go spend the weekend with my kids and grandkids and
That's
have
awesome.
downtime and stuff like that. So it definitely works out better with two people because one person doing this, no ma'am,
Definitely.
no ma'am.
It's you can, well, everybody needs that
Not
time,
okay.
you know,
Yes,
for self-care and to, you know, and to take care of, you know, your body, your mind, your soul, all of those
yes,
elements, and that, you know, that we all need to function in our best ability. And
right.
so
Yes.
that's good. I'm happy to hear that. So what are your relationships like now, like with your kid? You have grandkids, so with your kids and grandkids.
Great.
Mhm.
And thankfully, my drug use never really affected the relationships between me and my kids. We've always been very close. I've always done everything that I could for my kids. Um, I've always tried to make sure, every day that they know that they're loved by me. And that
Mhm.
was something that, when I first had them, that I promised, myself, I promised them that they are going to know that they're loved no matter what I'm going through, no matter what they're going through. Mama loves them. Mama's got their back no matter what. And
Mhm.
they know this. So
Mhm.
even though there was times in their life that, I wasn't completely present, I still made sure that I was there for their birthday, for Christmas. I
Yeah.
still came to see them, still brought them gifts. I was still present in their lives. Even though there was times that, I
Yeah.
wasn't.
Of course.
Yeah. And I mean, like just the your tenacity to want
Mhm.
to be a good mom, you
Yeah,
know, despite the issues that you face. I think that alone is commendable. A lot of times people think that, oh well, well, look, why don't they just stop using because they why don't they love us enough? And like that's really not it is that's not the case. It is It's not about them loving you. It's they're in literal survival mode, and survival mode can look different for everybody because we're all different. We were all made uniquely, and our reaction to the things that happen in our life, that they vary. The reactions vary, and some of them are more severe than others. But it doesn't make someone less of a person because their reaction may have been more severe than somebody else's. But it's the fact of that your kids had that opportunity to see you come back into their lives after that period of time, and to be consistent in their lives from that period on. Even though there was still some struggles, you were still consistent, which is a wonderful thing. And I was looking up the scripture, 2 Corinthians chapter 1 verses 3 and 4 talks about what you were talking about earlier about helping others through sharing your story. Verse 3 says, praise be to God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. And that's I love that scripture because it's just goes with the saying that I think most of us maybe have heard, like, well, my pain wasn't for no reason. I've experienced some things that were painful in life, but because God has comforted me in through that and helped me to see, like, often I say I used to ask the question of why me. Like, why did I have to experience these things? Or why did I have to, and so now it's like, why not me? Like, because I literally can relate, to certain things that and help people because he's comforted me. And I got healing, from the Lord. And so, like, there's no greater healing that can take place than the healing that we get from our Father, who loves us so very much. And his intent wasn't for us to experience the hard things. But we live in a world where that happens. And because we're Jesus didn't ask him to take us out of the world, but to protect us while we were in it. And when we can turn to him and not look at him as the problem, but as the solution,
that's good.
It do us a world of good.
That's good. That's true.
So tell us, so we're becoming a certified recovery support specialist. This is exciting news.
That's
and
awesome.
So how close are we to that?
I am doing my internships now. So yeah, after, I think I have about 100 more hours of internship to go. And then I'm ready to go.
Yeah. That's awesome.
You're gonna get that state certification. So that is exciting. So what's after that? What do we know what we're doing?
God ain't told me yet.
But
I'm trying not to take control because I have control issues. I'm trying to be still and just one step at a time, do what the Lord tells me to do. So yeah, he hadn't got that far with me because I have a tendency to want to kind of speed things up. And take control. And he knows that about me. So he gives it to me one step at a time at this point in life.
And that's the best way. One day at a time, 1 second at a time.
Well, it builds that trust too, because you have to rely on him.
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
yeah, that
I
keeps
can
that
feel you.
faith, feels that,
Yes.
that connection there. So I think
Yes.
that's how God works. I'm so glad I don't know everything before it happens. I know that much. I have faith that God's going to get me through it, and I pray, and now I can hand it over to Him. When before, when I
Yes.
had it in my own hands, well, that didn't ever work out.
And I'd be willing to say it don't work out for anybody when it's
Yeah, hey, that is
when
that's where you see all the chaos happen, is when we try to take
yes.
control of our own lives, and then we're wondering why everything is not working out. It's because we're not doing it according to God's plan. We're doing it
Yes.
according to our plan.
Her
Trying to
plan.
take
Yes.
over.
And
Yes.
that never works. We'll we'll
Uh-uh.
try we'll try for years, and then one day, like us, we wake up and we're like, "Hey, why wasn't I doing this all along?"
Yes. Okay. I like to say, life, I call it BC, before Christ. For
Yeah,
me, it was very, very terrible. I mean, when I
yeah,
look back on my hands and stuff, I'm like, what were you trying to do? I mean,
yeah,
like it was just equaling up to a bunch of nothing.
yeah.
Um, but with Christ, it's so much better. Like my life is so
Mhm,
much better because and it literally came from me making a decision
mhm.
to, okay, who's gonna have control, me or you? And I'm
Yeah,
like, obviously, I'm not doing great.
I'm not doing
Uh,
good.
yeah,
Being captain
none
this
at
ship.
all.
I can't
Yeah,
do
like
it at
it is
all.
going. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was going down real fast.
yeah.
But with him, I'm like, even though what he's taught me, number one, he like so he is not a liar. He never has been. He never will be. But Satan, however,
Mhm.
is, and that's the
Yeah.
number one thing that he uses against us is a lie. So it's so important that we, as whoever knows, what are you believing, what
Yeah.
and be honest with yourself about what you believe. um
Mhm.
because when you're sitting around lying to yourself, that's not helpful either. So being honest with yourself and
Mhm.
coming into the knowledge of Christ and allowing his word to be the standard. Like, what
Yeah.
does he say? It doesn't matter what I see, think, or feel. I say that so often because
That's
it really
good.
doesn't.
Because our emotions are, sometimes I'll like take a second. I'm like, I need to recenter, because these are just
Yes,
emotions. You don't have to react on these emotions. It's like reel it back
yes,
in, to the present, to what's going on now.
right.
And the Bible and the word helps with that, and prayer, and also
Yes,
calling you when I need you.
yeah. And knowing that, like our feelings can lie. They lie
I
sometimes,
know
like
they do, because and
they're
they
just
shift
not
so
true.
easily.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
Yes.
how I feel about me and Eric. My husband. It's
Yes.
like sometimes he just gets on my nerves, and I'm like, man, he's getting on my nerves. And then the next 30 minutes, I'm like, I just love him so much,
It's
and I'm just
amazing.
like, but it goes back to that behavior. Like, what was he
Yeah.
doing prior to that? You can't trust your
Yes.
emotions. Just, I mean,
Mm-mm.
that's with any relationship. My kids
Yeah.
get on my nerves too.
Yeah, it's like, oh my goodness, what do but then
Yeah.
like that's not really like how I
Yeah.
had this. I was sharing this with a group the other day. I was like, this is completely transparency. Because in this little study that we were doing, it was talking about how hormones and all of that can
Mhm.
play a part in how you feel
Yeah,
sometimes,
it
how you feel
does.
sometimes. And I told him, I said, I had this, I'm normally a chill kind of a person, like
Mhm.
just as a general thing. I like
Yeah,
most people. Yeah,
yeah,
like
yeah, me
I like
too.
most people all the time. And so there was this one particular person that, not all the time, but like just one week out of the month, I just could not
Yeah,
stand
Yeah, I get
to
it.
be in the presence of this
Yeah.
person. And I was just like, what is going, like it started to bother me because
Yeah.
as a general rule, I like people. But
Yeah.
this one particular person, I was like, what is the deal? Like, and I'm like, it's
Mhm.
not all the time. So that's weird, you know,
Yeah.
because it's just this one little
Mhm.
time. And so I started thinking about it, I was like, oh, I know what's happening here.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not me, you know, like it's not me and it's not them. Like they're not the
It's
problem either.
hormones.
Yeah, I was like, it's a hormone issue. And so I
Yeah.
was like, so
I
it
mean, and
helped me.
it is real. Like it's
Real,
real, and
yes.
that's how I find that sometimes. I'm like, sometimes these things just are really aggravating me. And then I'm like, oh
Yes.
yeah, well now I know why.
Yeah, so I'm like, that's another one of those situations where it's a false,
Mhm.
you know, like a false thing. So I'm like, it's not me or them. So I
Yeah.
don't have to get, you know, upset with myself and feel bad because I don't like them, you know,
Yeah.
or whatever. Or I don't have to be lashing out and being mean, you
Right.
know, which is not a part of my normal personality
Yeah,
either.
your personality.
So yeah, to get bent out of shit. So I'm like, once I should, I could, the awareness of that was very
Mhm.
helpful to where I just knew to be quiet, you know, and
Yeah.
not, you know, go around or be around
Yeah.
this person that for that week too much. So that it didn't get out of hand. But it's so helpful when we can put these things on trial, you know, like why am I? What's really going on?
Having that awareness though really does help shape your relationships and how you can interact with people, just knowing just
Yeah.
little things like that. I know that, you know, before I start my period, I'm going to be wanting cookies and ice cream, and that's what I want, and that's what I'm getting.
Yes. And so then you don't have to beat yourself up about it.
And
It's
I don't.
like,
I mean, I'm going to eat
yeah.
it because that's what my body is telling me I need.
Tell me, yeah. And you know, it's not gonna last for 30 days. You know,
It's
it's just
not, it's not.
this
So
little
just let me have
temporary
it when I
part.
need it, and then
Yeah.
let it flow.
Yeah. And then
But
what I found is it helps you to do it in moderation too. Because you know,
it
like, okay, I
does.
just, you know, I can have the craving and give it, you know, that and then move on. I don't have
It
to eat a
actually
whole
helps.
box.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
because
can,
then you feel bad, but honestly, if you listen to your body, I mean, your body will tell you, just like your mind will, but you can't always trust your mind. But I mean, like our bodies are indicators. We have symptoms because
yeah.
something is off and it's telling us. Like, when you hurt your hand, like, hey, it's in
Yeah.
pain, something's wrong,
Something's wrong. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just
Absolutely.
listening to that, in all
Yeah.
aspects of our lives.
Yeah. And like you were saying, our minds are, like, I used to have the idea that my brain controlled just everything, you know, like, oh,
Yeah.
it's just my brain, it's just
Yeah.
doing what it does. But it's like,
Mhm.
no, your mind controls that. Your mind
Yeah.
controls your brain.
Mhm.
Like when, you know, when we all got on here today, it's like, oh, there's hope. Let me say hey
Yeah.
to hope, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like my mind told my brain to tell my hand to wave.
Yeah.
So if my mind is operating and functioning correctly,
Mhm.
then the rest of me is going to function
Yes.
correctly. So it goes back to what Carrie was saying earlier. Her mind
Mhm.
was changed through the Bible calls it the washing of the word. You
Yeah.
know, so having her mind renewed, so now her thoughts, they weren't the same as what they used to be.
Yeah.
Her thoughts are not, you know, so her mind tells her like we don't need a substance to cope.
Yeah.
Here is how we cope. We pray, we talk to God, we read his word, then we put that word into action and we get different results.
Mhm.
You get someone who, like, because I don't know, Carrie, if you know this, but it ain't a whole lot of people that have been in the company of Bryce.
Oh,
Okay,
Bryce.
it's not a whole lot of people. that have been in that facility, that have come out of that facility,
Yeah.
and can obviously you're sane.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously you're sane. So like
Yeah,
that
that's
is right
that
there
right
is
there.
a
It's so impressive, and I'm so glad that you
yes.
were vulnerable enough to share that because it all goes back. But it reminded me of when you were sharing all that. It just brought me back to when you're 18 years old and you started dabbling into the darkness, that I call it.
Mhm.
Naively, but I feel like it kind of like it opened up you to a different spiritual world, and it kind of like
Yeah.
it kept you there, and
It
it
did. Yeah.
played in your on your mind and
Yeah.
emotions, and eventually your addictions and all of that. And so for you were able to break through that, but it was by the word of God, which is the
Right.
truth. Because if you've ever, which you have, experienced that torment is what keeps me sober today, because
Yes.
that torment is literally like hell on earth.
Yeah.
And if you've ever experienced that, I mean, that even like a glimpse of thinking about that, what I've went through, and you've went through it, and obviously in different ways, but it going back to that's what keeps me honestly sober today. I mean, I used to have been like, it's my kids, but it's not my kids, it's not my family. It's honestly just knowing that if I don't, that torment that would be on my life would honestly probably take my life. Like, I know
Yeah.
that,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and that.
Yeah.
So it's having that awareness. And I like how you shared too that you still, you get on your knees and you still have those times where, because challenges come, we're human. And so but you know how to cope with it now. Like, to pray, to read your word, to talk to somebody, to have that accountability, because things will come up in life, but you have that awareness now of what to go to. And it's not back to substances, which eventually lead you back to Bryce, the nut house.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't
That
want you to go there, so
Mm-mm.
no, no.
Mm-mm.
And that oppression and that
Mhm.
torment is
Yeah,
like scary. Like,
yeah,
and not feeling the presence of God. I never want to experience that, not even for a second of my life again.
yeah,
Me
You
either.
know,
Yeah.
I am running after God, full force, and I don't even want to look back because that experience is, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. And
yeah.
just the way that I felt, I can't imagine how much more, it's going to be in hell,
Oh, yeah,
because that was
Ooh,
hard
yeah.
enough.
yeah.
Um,
That's good.
that I never want to experience again or anything like it.
Yeah,
Yes. Oh, like that is amazing. Um, like that you equate it to that, like, because I can imagine that that's like hell would be so many more times
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
that that feeling.
yeah,
Um, and I don't know if y'all have ever seen or witnessed there's these I've seen them on like YouTube. These it was one guy in particular that I saw who was telling his story of he was shot like several times, but his experience of he said he went to hell.
Mm-hmm.
And him talking about it, and the way that how when sometimes people are telling you something, and you can literally like almost feel like you're there with them.
Yeah.
It was like him telling this account that he had, and he was like, it seemed like it was like so long, but he was like, when he got like his medical, stuff, he
Mhm.
was like, it was just a short, period of time that he was out of it. But
Mhm.
like just his description of, I'm like, I would not, I don't, I'm like, I'm having a hard time hearing you talk about your,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
experience. How long do I want to experience that myself?
Mhm.
But like being to the point of where you literally, I think, want to die. Like
Mhm.
you want to, and you have the thought, or even are going towards the plan of taking your own life. That's a
Mm.
level of torment there too.
Yeah.
Um,
It really
you
is.
know,
Yeah.
and oppression. And so it's like, if anybody's, if you've experienced any of that,
Mhm.
any situations like that, it does, like, it changes your life, and it
Mhm.
changes your perspective on life when you can get connected to God. Like, I cannot say that,
Yeah.
enough.
No.
Like,
Yeah.
there's power in you getting agreement with God,
Yes.
That's
and trusting him. And so many people, especially who's been in a situation where, you know traumatic situations happen early in
Mhm.
life, and even for people who did happen later in life,
Mhm.
trauma takes is where you feel powerless. So
Mhm.
that's why we tried to take control of our lives in the first
Yeah.
place, because we had gone
That's
through
good.
traumatic experiences that
Mhm.
left us feeling powerless and out of control. So we had to
Mhm.
try to gain
And trying to
control in
take
some
control.
area,
Yeah.
which, wound up harming us even further.
Mhm.
But when we can choose to say, you know what, I'm gonna lose control and allow God to have control,
Mhm.
the one who made me, the one who knows
Yeah.
all about me, even the
Yeah.
stuff I don't know about me, he can
Yeah.
tell me. um, and I'm put myself in his hands and allow him to
Mhm.
be to steer the ship. And I sit back, and I'm talking to him. I'm asking
Mhm.
him, like, okay, which way are we going now? What
Mhm.
are we doing? What are we doing now?
Yeah.
What do you want me to do now? A part of my daily prayer is for him to tell me what to do, when to do, and how to do it.
Yeah.
yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, because I'm like, if you don't want me to do it, please, by all means, don't let me go anywhere
Yeah.
near.
And just
Um,
just shut the
That's
door, you know? That's what I
yeah,
pray is,
yeah,
open the doors that need to be open and shut the ones that need to be closed. And I have
yes,
found that to be really, really true in my recovery is, there have been some doors shut, and at the time I was like, well, should I pray that? but it was for my good, and I think that's what people don't realize is that sometimes a no to us may hurt for a second, but it serves us in the long term.
yeah,
um and so that's what I trust now. If it's not for me, I don't want it anyways, because
right.
that's
yeah,
it's not going to be good for me. And so,
yeah,
and that's just how I look at things now, regardless of what it is. Which
yes,
Carrie,
I have that
you live by
same
that
look.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. I pray for the open doors
Mm-hmm.
and to close the doors too. That is absolutely a daily prayer, but that
Mm-hmm.
he guides my steps,
Mm-hmm.
to those open doors and lead me away from those closed doors.
Yeah.
yeah,
Because ultimately he knows what is best. He knows
Yeah.
me inside and out like no other person ever could.
Mm-hmm.
He knows me better than myself, so he knows what I need. He's
Yeah.
my creator. Of course, he knows what I need,
yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes,
so I have to give that ultimate trust to him in every single situation. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because, he is the
yeah,
supreme God,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
sovereign,
yeah,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And he makes things happen when we can't. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I've seen him work out things that, that I never thought would have been able to be worked out. I mean, I had faith it would. And I think that that's what activates it, honestly, is
Yeah,
believing. If you believe in it and believe God's word and truth and have that faith, it just works out. It comes together. God works with that.
yeah,
He
Yeah.
has in my life.
Yeah. And it goes back to that note that you got that day, Carrie.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Without faith,
because
it's impossible to please him.
yeah, because I, had to have those confirmations
I
and
love
I
that.
questioned myself.
Yeah.
But see, the thing is I knew that I was hearing from God, but I didn't want to listen. I was
Yeah.
being stubborn and that was the eventual, okay, you don't want to listen to me. You want to keep calling out to me, but you don't want to listen to me. So you go on and do it yourself and see how that turns out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then I learned real quick that that's no 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 God, I'm sorry,
Don't
I'm
do it
gonna listen
yourself.
to you now.
Yeah.
Well,
So
he'll stop you too. Yeah, I mean, yeah,
yeah,
he works things out where if you're doing
yeah,
something you don't need to be doing, yeah, there'll be a stop to it.
yeah,
He'll put a
Yes.
hold somewhere.
yeah.
Yes.
And he
I was
did,
telling my sister not long ago, we were talking about t-shirts. Y'all know I love t-shirts and I
Yeah,
love t-shirts with stuff on it.
yeah.
And I had asked her, I was like, hey, I need you to do a t-shirt for me that says "Don't do you." And she said,
Oh,
"Don't do you?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "You know how sometimes, I said, when people say, oh, well, do you, go ahead, do
yeah.
you." I
Well,
said,
do
they're
you?
not saying that because they really want you to do you.
Yeah,
They're saying,
yeah,
I said, they're saying that in connection to something that they don't believe that you should do.
yeah. But
But
just go ahead
but
with your
but
business.
just,
Go ahead.
yeah, because you ain't
Yeah,
gonna listen to me no way. So just
yeah.
go ahead,
That's true.
do
That's
yeah, go
true.
ahead, do you. And then they, often go, well, do you, boo. It's like,
Yeah, do
it's
you,
so,
boo? Go ahead with whatever
it's
you
so
got going.
sarcastic. And
Yeah, it is sarcastic,
it's like, no, yeah. So I said, I want you to make me a shirt that says
That's
"Don't do you."
good. I like that because
Yeah.
that is true.
Because I
Like,
was
go
like,
ahead and
that's
do whatever you
often,
want to do anyways.
yeah,
I've heard
look,
that a few times.
yeah.
I'm
So
like,
it's
okay,
like,
I will.
yeah, it's like, don't do you. And matter of fact, do the opposite of what you were thinking of.
Yeah. Yeah, whatever your thought was, just go ahead.
Just don't do that.
Yeah, just don't
Yeah.
do
And I was
it.
like, that's often how God is like, don't do. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
that would
that
be
is
you
true.
doing the oh, you don't do that.
Yeah,
do
don't do that. Don't go back there. Let's
Yes,
reel
do
it
this
in.
new thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do something new. Do
Yeah.
something new and different. Yeah. So that, which is ultimately what a recovered life is you doing different.
Mhm.
Um, doing something different. And I'm so glad, Carrie, that you made that decision to
Yep.
do
I am
different.
too. I'm glad that I quit ignoring what I knew was God and put that faith in Him because it's a whole
Yes.
new way of life and it's so much better
Yeah.
than what I could have without Him.
Amen. Amen. So keep living it up, sister. We're
Yeah.
3 years in and we've got so many more to go.
Yeah.
Just excited for the plans that God has for you, which he
Mhm.
will share with you at the time that they're supposed to be shared.
That's right.
Yeah, so thank you so much for again for coming and for sharing your story. I know it's going to help somebody else.
Yeah.
And continue to help that it will continue to help others as you continue to follow his footsteps and do what he's called you to do, which is an amazing it's amazing to be a part and to
Mm.
get to be a part of helping others to succeed
Yeah.
in their endeavors of reaching recovery like you have. So keep up the good work, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks
Yep.
for having me,
Proud
guys.
of you, Carrie. Thank
You
you for
are
coming
welcome.
on. I was blessed by your story today.
Thank you.
Amen.
All right. Well, check out next week's episode.
Yes. Awesome. See you guys later.
All right,
Bye.